Hey everyone, Sam here, otherwise known as FPL Pricey. Now today's video will be a little bit different to the usual stuff on my channel. For the first time ever, I have actually got a guest on my show. It's a fantastic guest as well. If you've seen the thumbnail, I'm sure you'll know who it is, but I'll leave it for just in a second for when I introduce him. However, today's video will be largely around a game week preview for game week 13. We do talk about free hit drafts a little bit in the video as well, and the way that we're approaching the next few game weeks in FPL as we go through that really congested fixture period, including the midweek fixture in game week 14 and then the Christmas period after the AFCON 5 free transfers. So all of that is covered today. Hopefully you enjoy it. And I do apologize, it's a little bit longer than usual. However, I think for this guest, it is worthwhile. Anyway, let's crack on with the show and hopefully you enjoy it as much as I did. Hey everyone, and welcome back to a brand new video on my channel. And today is the first of something a little bit different. I think I've done 287 videos on the FPL Pricey channel. I've never had a guest on before, but today that changes. And I'm very grateful that one of the best FPL managers there is, but also one of the most humble and interesting to listen to as well, Pras, is joining me on the show. I won't butter him up too much because I know he'll blush. But Pras, how are you doing? And it's an honor to have you on the show.
It's an honor for me to be here. It's the first time I'm on this channel, something I've listened to in the past. I'm a long-time subscriber, and I think, it's great that you're doing this. We met, was it a couple of years ago or maybe even longer? And you were saying, you were thinking about doing something like this. So it's great. It's great to be on and be part of this. Thank you for the kind introduction. I'm having a terrible season. So this year, I go as a guest, there's no pressure, right? I can just talk about anything and I don't have to, talk about ranks and stuff. So I'm just one of everyone else who's listening. So that's how I'd like to be introduced.
Fantastic. And honestly, you might be, I think you're something like 1.5, 1.8 million at the moment. I would not be shocked to see you up in the top 10K by the end of the season. And it's still early days. We've got some questions on that later.
We'll see.
We'll see. But the comeback will be glorious. I was just thinking before this call, actually, I think we met at FPL Meets at the old location. And
yes,
I think you were one of the very first people who came up to me alongside Tom, my co-host on Who Got the Assist. I think you two were like the first two that came and introduced yourselves. So yeah, thank you for that.
No, absolutely. And I'd like to believe in that conversation. We were also trying to talk you into doing stuff and that you were interested in it. So here we are.
You were indeed. And on that note, I think I'm 50 subscribers away from 5K now. So if you did enjoy today's show and you're watching out there, hit like, importantly, hit subscribe as well. And you can help me on my way to 5K. That will be the last time I ask for that today, I promise. Let's get into the meat of it. I've got a bit of a running order today because having you on the show, we want to pick your brains. We want to ask the important, hard-hitting questions. We've got AFCON coming up. And obviously, game week 16, we've got the 5 free transfers loading. We've got 3 game weeks before that, though. We've just finished game week 12. Unfortunately, we won't go into what just happened on the Monday evening because I don't think we need to, considering the result.
Was there a game on Monday evening? I must have missed it.
There certainly wasn't 2 teams playing, put it that way.
Yeah.
But game week 12 is in the books. We've got 3 game weeks now before the 5 free transfers loads. And how many free transfers have you got at the moment, Pras, going into the next game week?
I've just got the one.
Just the one. I'm 2 at the moment, although I must admit I've already spent 1, which is very naughty of me. I don't usually spend a transfer this early, but I felt like it just needed to be done. So I've got 4 free transfers to use between now and the reload. You've got 3. Are you currently planning on using your free hit before we get to game week 16?
Currently, no. But as you know, the 13, 14, 15 fixture block is also within a week, right?
Yeah.
So my approach has always been just leave it. So my planned week is game week 16, but I could play it any week. I could play it this week. If I've got Semenyo in my team, if he is still out, you've got Mateta with a little bit of a question mark. Let's see what happens in midweek. So it takes 2 players. And then I'm like, you know what? Just play it this week. Because I think the value of free hit is very, very low for those who have it left. For those like you who've played it, I think they don't need to be worried. Because whichever free hit team you look at, you'll go, you know what? My team is not too bad. It doesn't look too different. I mean, it'll look different, but it's like, yeah, Sar can score a goal. I'm not afraid of Rodgers if I have Sar. So I think that's the approach. And I think every week will be like this.
Yeah, I completely agree. And even using it earlier this season, I had the same problem where in a single game week, I think the free hit is the one chip out of the lot where I would almost be a little bit worried of losing points. Triple captain, it can happen. Bench boost, it can happen, but it's very, very unlikely. Free hit, you can be on both sides of the variance curve. And we'll come on to the bell curve with Solio later on. But some of the free hit drafts I've seen this week, they look really strong on paper, but you're backing some teams that historically we don't have a lot of coverage in. You've got Aston Villa in there, Brentford as well. Obviously, Liverpool are a big topic this week, but they've got a good fixture. So, of course, you'd want to back them as well. But like you say, it doesn't come without risk. So I think the way that you're planning on playing it is probably the best way, in my view, between now and game week 19, where it's just, well, let's see if we get a week where you're just a little bit hard done by injuries. Maybe you can see some rotation coming, maybe a couple of suspensions come in. I know we've got Munoz, Senesi on 4 yellows. Those things can all come together and conspire against you at once. And that could be the week that looks most opportune for you. But we'll come on to free hits in later on in the show. We've got the game week 13 in focus later, and we'll have a quick run through of some of the top teams to target using Solio. Over the next 3 game weeks, if you're not currently booking in a free hit, I suppose, where are you seeing the opportunity for free transfers between now and 16? Are you, I suppose, planning on using those transfers aggressively with the idea that you've got the 5 free transfers to get you out of those punts? Or are you thinking along the lines of, okay, I'll use these free transfers between now and 16 to set up my team, so by the time we get to game week 16, I don't need to really have any plans to move any players out. I've got the free transfers and I'll try and kick those down the road a little while.
Very much the latter. So the thinking is that, when we get transfers in game week 16, I want to set up long term. I want to keep 3 to 5 transfers until game week 25, even 29. So, or for a rainy day, if there's a big injury, Haaland gets injured. So you want to have those transfers. It's a gift, so you accept the gift. I think there's the approach that people will get transfers and make all of them in 16 and 17. I don't think anyone in the engaged community will do that. So there will be a lot of transfer activity. In game week 16, we'll see volatile price movements. In 17, even we might see it. But I think a lot of our engaged managers will do our transfers in game week 15. And then from 16, we'll be like, okay, I've got it. Now I'm going to keep it. So your first part of the question is what happens until game week 16? And I think until game week 16, you have to really look at your team and just allocate long-term picks versus short-term picks. Actually, there's a third category. Long-term picks, short-term picks, and a category where you only want them until game week 14 or 15. And so Crystal Palace, for example, come into this third category where Crystal Palace is playing away to Fulham in game week 15. So you could just say at that point, Sar is off to AFCON. Why should I wait for game week 16 to get 5 free transfers? I've got one I have to use this week. Just take Sar out. Then who can I go to? Somebody long-term. So Minte, for example, is home to West Ham. So Sar to Minte is going to be a very popular transfer in game week 15 for those that don't have Minte. You could look at Sar to, for example, a Newcastle player, Gordon, if he's back. I know Gordon was in some teams, including myself, and he didn't do very well. But he's got Burnley and Sunderland, the 2 promoted teams back-to-back. So you could look at people who do that. So long answer to your question, between 13 to 15, I'm looking to make these categories. Like, I'm not going to sell Van Dijk, Bruno Fernandes, Haaland, Saka, Timber, even Pope. I think those are long-term. I think the other picks, it's all up in the air in terms of what happens. One of them could get injured, and then I use those transfers. Otherwise, in game week 15, I just use 2 or 3 of them on something, which I haven't yet determined because information changes.
Yeah. I really like that answer. Thank you. And I guess I'm agreeing on that as well, in the sense that my transfers, I had 4 free transfers last week. I used 3 of them, and I tried, at least with 2 of my 3 free transfers that I used, to go after the 90-minute men, long-term picks that I can basically just lock down my team with and not have to plan ahead knowing that they're going to come out. So I had a bit of a 50-50, if you will, between Mbeumo and Bruno. I think a lot of us have done recently. I went with Bruno. Obviously, neither of them did much tonight, but I feel fairly comfortable in the knowledge that we get to game week 16, 17. I know there's some speculation about when Mbeumo might go, but that'll be a transfer I don't need to use. And Mbeumo might beat him in the next few game weeks, but I think long term, that will save me making any adjustments later on. So I completely agree with that. The final part, before we move on to the Christmas period in isolation, that game week 14, it's not a bad game week on paper for a lot of our like template sides out there. Do you see this as a heavy rotation week, or are you seeing this more of a, okay, it's a midweek? We have teams who play midweek most weeks throughout the season anyway, and they don't heavily rotate. How concerned are you by that, and how much planning are you doing around that to make sure that your team is in a secure place?
So two things. One is known rotation and the other is unknown rotation, right? So problem in game week 14 is there's going to be a lot of unknown rotation. We think Mateta could be rested because he's carrying something. We think maybe Saka misses out because, Arsenal are playing 3 games in 6 days. We think Timber could miss out. But then you are also not sure. Arsenal are going for the league. Crystal Palace keep putting the same players out every week in, week out. Who else are we talking about? Liverpool, home to Sunderland. You don't know who starts. Maybe Salah starts, but who else? Van Dijk. So I think 14 is one of those quirky weeks where I think the cop-out answer is you just have to live with what you get. And you know what? Even your bench won't save you. Because in most cases, whoever doesn't start, same players that I've just talked about, most likely also come on. So in the scenario where it's unexpected benching, there's nothing you can do. Everybody's in the same position. Just hope for the best. And if you have players like Bruno Fernandes, Van Dijk, Mbeumo, who else are the 90 minutes men that we have? Haaland, most likely. And, other centre backs. Lacroix, other centre backs as well. They're all good, right? I mean, that's the gift we've got this season, that we can pick all these centre backs and they all do fine. So maybe it's not as bad as we think, but I wouldn't, for example, assume there will be rotation and play a free hit, but that's a very dangerous free hit, because let's assume you say, I think Arsenal will rotate. What if they don't? And you missed out on Arsenal players home to Brentford. Same for Crystal Palace. Crystal Palace will rotate. What if they don't? Munoz still plays, and he does normally play every game anyway. So that's why 14 is a little bit tricky. Now, where you can plan for it is maybe take 2 free transfers from game week 13, if you can. And then there's a niggle for a player that is popular. Now you know that it's a planned rotation. Like, it's very unlikely that they play 14 because it's in 2 days' time. Normally, when there's a niggle, let's say Semenyo is a good example this weekend, we are pretty, or Cunha is another one. We're pretty sure they should be okay next weekend because there's 7 days to the next game and it's minor. It's not 100%, but it's very likely. If we had a midweek fixture, it would be panic stations for Semenyo owners and Cunha owners because the game is in 2 days. So I think that's where 14 becomes important, where what happens in game week 13 could mean that I could, for example, even play the free hit in 14. If Saka has a little niggle, and I'm like, okay, then I can get, and other players are back, I can get those players and be a little bit aggressive with the free hit. And that's how I'm planning to do it.
So what I'm hearing is try to make sure you've got a couple of free transfers if possible. Obviously, lock down with as many secure picks as possible as well with the 90-minute men. And then, of course, there's an element of you're in the hands of the gods. There's only so much you can plan for. It might just be best not to overthink these things to the point where it's like, oh, but what if Saka then gets rotated because he's playing 3 games in a week? Madueke might come in. I think that's where you can kind of tie yourself up in knots a little bit. So again, great advice.
But you have an interesting point. What makes 14 worse for rotation is it's sandwiching tougher games. So for Chelsea, for Arsenal, it's sandwiching Chelsea and Aston Villa. For Chelsea, again, they've got Arsenal and Bournemouth, and in the middle they have Leeds. So Crystal Palace and Man United and Fulham. In the middle, they have Burnley. So they, like, all the signs do point towards some rotation, whether it's for the players you own or not. You never know.
Yeah. So there could be some mild annoyance on the timeline that day, but I'm very much of the opinion that once or twice a season you do get a bit of random rotation. You can't really account for the exact players, and even the 90-minute men, we have seen it before. So I think as long as you feel secure enough with your picks long term, they might get the odd rest. But generally speaking, as long as you've got a couple of good subs coming in, it's not ideal for me because I've got Anderson against City that week, but I'll live with it. I'm not going to lose sleep.
He's at home, DEFCON.
He is at home. Yeah, he should get DEFCON against City. Although Did I see Tom Hadley running some numbers? City don't actually give up much DEFCON against their opponents, right? So
yeah, because they don't give up possession.
That's it. Yeah.
Pep
They don't
ball.
hoof the ball up either. They're just very slow in their progression. There's no DEFCON to be had. Although Anderson is about the best in the league at picking it up. So if anyone can do it, it'll be a real fire and ice moment for that one. Let's move past this little block and after the AFCON transfers come in. This is more of a question around your general attitudes, I suppose, to the Christmas period rather than in isolation this season. How do you usually approach the Christmas period? Obviously, we've got a lot of fixtures. Is there a certain kind of type of player that you look for? I think given our conversations, we can kind of assume where you might be looking. And then through the lens of this season, where are you expecting your transfers to be honed in on, given the fixtures and the way they line up for certain teams?
I mean, Christmas period we're getting into it now, exactly 13 and beyond. It's not Christmas, but, fixture congestion is here. And look, the test is if your player regularly gets subbed off before the 80th minute or 75th minute, you could put a number, 70th, whatever, then that means there's a replacement available for that player who gets minutes. Or your player has fatigue issues. Take Clivert as an example, that cannot last the full game. These are players that are prime candidates for missing a midweek fixture because either their fitness is not up to scratch or their competitor is ready for a start because, he needs minutes as well. So players that come to mind, Gordon versus Barnes, Murphy versus Elanga, Gakpo versus Wirtz. Now, as long as the competitor is fit, that's when this applies. Now, in Gakpo says, for example, Wirtz is injured. So if he's injured, then he doesn't fall into this category, though he would still fall into this category short term. But I can understand people taking a punt because we also live in the first topic that we discussed, which is pre-AFCON. So you can have the luxury of transfers. It's a complicated answer. So same for fullbacks. When you're thinking about O'Neill versus Ait Nouri, when you're thinking about Kirkes versus Robertson. So this is stuff that I will never engage in. I usually don't even do it early season, but definitely not even for a punt in this period. So people who play 90 minutes, who are good, have route to points, who will accumulate minutes and points, and they add up very quickly. I like them. There was a lot of hatred for Van Dijk this week because Liverpool lost. Probably rightly so. They're down in the dumps, 11th in the league. But are they 12th now because Everton won?
Yeah, quite possibly. I'll have to double check that. It's all moving around.
Remember, there was no game tonight, so we have no idea anyway.
Of course.
So Van Dijk fits into that category for me. I got him for this reason. I'm not panic selling him until Christmas. You can be sure of this, unless he's injured. That's my kind of player. Even if, of course, if they concede 3 every game, maybe okay, I'll change my answer. But I know that will not happen. Liverpool will work it out. And so with the good fixtures, he's that perfect pick. I think Bruno falls into that category. He's very divisive. So I generally don't like to talk about him because people either hate him or they accept him. And to them, I say, if you hate him, don't pick him, right? I mean, we're not telling you to pick him. So if that's not your kind of pick, but for me, in this period, every single game, you don't need to check the team sheet. If Man United get a penalty in these 7 game weeks that you see in front of us, maybe they get 1, maybe they get 2. You get those 2 free goals. You get 90 minutes, some DEFCON. Again, I think he accumulated 11 today. So that's what you get with him. And so he's the perfect player. And then obviously you have talisman penalty takers from other teams who play regularly. Haaland, Saka, Palmer. Palmer obviously injury doubts, but these are the types of players I like if they have route to points and minutes.
On that note, just I did not in the script, not in the running order. Where would you put someone like a Danny Welbeck on there at the moment? Obviously, historically, a little bit of a minutes risk, has been getting very solid minutes recently. Given the age profile as well, do you still see that as slightly too risky? I'm almost trying to measure where the bar is for you on how nailed they need to be. Yeah, okay.
I wouldn't go for Welbeck. Personally, look, I think he's a very good pick. And if this was early season, many people would be looking at him. But now that you have 3 games in 7 days, it's not just whether he starts or not. Given his form, he probably starts. But his minutes could be managed because he's just getting older, right? Or he could get injured because he has been injury prone. When you have somebody like a Thiago right there, who's similar profile and getting similar attacking returns, that would be the preference.
I'm glad you answered that way, because I have used my first free transfer on selling João Pedro for Thiago and not for Danny
Excellent.
Welbeck. So thank you for answering in that way. I'm going to now switch over to the Solio screen, which obviously is a part of the reason, not the whole reason, but a part of the reason we're here today. So we're over across to my, well, I would say live team, but I have now moved out João Pedro for Thiago. And I think this is a good time to maybe bring up the importance of expected minutes, security of starts in the under the lens of maybe my team to begin with, but we can also look at other players where there might be some doubts. So I'll drag this across to my screen now because it's on a second screen. But if we're looking at the projection data, obviously the Solio model, and you'll know this better than me, so feel free to cut in at any point, but the Solio model will take all of those expected minutes into account when weighing up the points totals that we're seeing on screen here. And it's not as simple as, oh, they're just telling you he's going to get an average of 85 minutes a match, 90 minutes a match, and that's your lot. You just have to deal with it. It's actually much more sophisticated than that, isn't it, Pras?
Yeah, so it's actually, if you click on a player, you'll see the likelihood of them making 60 minutes, or actually, so there's two bars here. There you go. So you can adjust it horizontally and vertically, this little dot. And so you could have a view that certain players, let's use an example. Let's take Gakpo, right? So Gakpo is 80% likely to start a game. So therefore, what you do is you'll say, well, actually, it's already on 80%. I didn't do this, by the way.
Are you sure?
So he's 80% likely to play. And then if he does start, then 50% of the time he makes above 6. Maybe we can bump that up a little bit because Wirtz is injured. Maybe you can even argue you can up the start a little bit, but I would keep it 82 because he's not a guaranteed starter. He's not a Van Dijk, right? So you can adjust that bit, and then you can adjust the last bit, which is, can he play 90 minutes? Because that's very rare. Not many players play 90 minutes because there's 5 subs, so only 6 theoretically can, and a goalkeeper is rarely subbed. So actually only half of the players can theoretically play 90 minutes. So you have to think about that. Is he one of those that is always subbed? And we know, right? So Gakpo, I would put close to 0% to play 90 minutes. However, actually what is really cool is now if you do this for defenders, so let's do Konate, right? Konate is a good example. He got subbed off on the 59th minute this season, or sorry, last game week. So when he starts, he's very likely to start. Let's bump that down now a little bit. 67 looks a little high. He's still, I think this was game state because they were chasing the game. So let's make it 80% that he makes it past 60 minutes.
Yep.
And let's make it very unlikely that he plays 90 for whatever reason, right? We're just using an example. His numbers will actually go up now. Because for defenders, remember, if you don't play 90 minutes, but you played 60, that's actually good.
Yeah, good point.
Unless you accumulate defensive contribution points. So in this case, Konate is actually a good player for defensive contribution. So had we used an example for, let's say, Guardiola's numbers would go up if you assumed that he would get subbed off between 60 to 90th, because he never actually gets DEFCON anyway. So it's just a long answer to your question that you can play around with minutes, because the whole ethos of Solio is that it should back your beliefs, and your beliefs can be on minutes, it can be on expected goals, it can be on clean sheets, it can be on team strengths, that you think one team is better than what the model thinks or worse. It can be on assist share. So there's a lot that you can put in here. That it can even be on fixture beliefs. You may think it will snow. If you're Andy Martin, if you think it will snow, you can move the fixture and then see what the model tells you to do. So that's the whole idea of this, was to put the control in your hands. I know sometimes it can be a little bit overwhelming that, I don't know. But you know what? We do this all the time. We do this all the time. And when we're on YouTube, we're saying, I really like this guy. He's the center point of attack. Well, go and check the numbers. If he's only 30% of their goal share, then maybe you think that he's higher, right? Because if you're calling him the focal point of attack, but he's only scoring less than 1/3 of the goals, that's not focal point. So I think that's what the intent of the model is. The more you use it, the better you get, because the more you use it, the more you realize, actually, even though I think Haaland can score every single game, it's not really practical. So maybe 0.7 or 70% of a chance of a goal is decent enough. And maybe I can go against him, because with 70% goal odds, Saka can be better, because Saka can get an assist or a DEFCON and outscore him.
Absolutely. And I suppose the other side of this model, which I don't think we've really spoken about, or I've not seen it on the Solio channel all too much, is the power of the effective ownership modeling. Now, obviously, we're not psychic. We can't predict the exact effective ownership of game weeks to come. But what I personally really like doing with Solio is switching it over to the relative power, like where I am against the crowd. And although I know that it's not going to be precise, it's not going to be exact, just looking at what the effective ownerships were last week and then applying that with a few of the predicted transfers baked in, I find myself really using that week to week to try and model how I'm kind of faring against the crowd that week. And it's quite a nice way of, I'm quite a defensive manager, I think. And sometimes I do get a little bit concerned about ownership. I'll ask you about your feelings on that in a moment. But I like using this model and changing the effective ownerships. Mateta was a great one where I had to mess with it a little bit a couple of game weeks ago because I thought it would rise really quickly. I didn't have a route to him I liked. How much exposure to risk am I going to have to take on by going against Mateta, knowing that the ownership's going to rise? Actually, the models didn't hate me for it. They actually predicted me to do fairly well. I was brave enough to go against him. It's worked out better than I expected it to. But also, even if it didn't, I probably wouldn't have been crushed by Mateta given the effective ownership. And Burmo's come into that recently, and I'm going against him, as I believe you are as well. And I quite like using this side of the model. And I don't know whether there's any sort of background you want to give to this, or whether you use this yourself. And on top of that, finally, if you want to wrap up with how you feel about effective ownership, whether you see it as a bit of a sword or something to defend against as a shield.
So let me answer the first one. Sorry, the last question first. In the sense of, I know there's a common thing of this is my style, right? This is how I play. But what I would say is we all play both ways. It's not so true. We're all scared. We're all scared when Mbeumo takes a shot or Semenyo has a shot and you don't own him, of course. But I think we take on players by definition a lot because we also have a lot of differentials. If you have a differential in your team, if you start a 5% owned Anderson or a 15% owned Ndai, then by definition, you will not have some highly owned players. So therefore, you always are taking players on. So I think effective ownership comes into it for two or three things. So firstly, individual players. For certain players, do you want to take them on for effective ownership? So it's an isolated case. In cases like Mbeumo, I feel like I can take him on because I have Bruno. Some people have both. But in my case, my way of thinking is Bruno just needs to outscore Mbeumo in this match. And in that case, Mbeumo's effective ownership does not matter because both of them combined is 100. Very few own both. So that's the way I get around it. Sometimes it doesn't work, where I didn't start with João Pedro and he got that 17-pointer. Eventually, to be proven right that he's an absolute fraud and he doesn't do anything. But in that case, I was punished. So I think taking on effective ownership smartly is the right thing to do. This week, I don't know if you captained Saka, I did. So it was an against EO play to say, yeah, I'm scared of Haaland, man. Like that moment where he had that shot in the box, I was watching the game and it was not a very pleasant feeling. But then those times when Saka had those shots or almost assisted to Eze, that was also fun. So I think it's really a case of we have to pick our individual battles. I think the two examples where EO is really important is captaincy or triple captaincy, where you can think about, if I captain a certain player, essentially I have a 12th player. Everybody has 11, but your captain is your 12th player. So I'm only changing one player, and can I pick a lower owned player or a player that not many people own, who I think will score the same number, if not more points than the competitor? Then I think you can take on EO, or you can play safe. If you're in a mini league and it's game week 38, we hear about this all the time, right? My player is my second guy is chasing me, block him. What is that? That's EO play. What you're saying is I want to make this player 100% EO so that he doesn't affect me if he scores well. So in that context, I think you can use captaincy, and at the end of the season, you can use EO a lot better, for better or against you. And I think the second thing where you can use risk or EO is free hit, right? Because in free hit, you can pick any player. And in free hit, if you use expected point models and you see that Semenyo has the same expected points as Rogers this week, let's take an example, then you pick Rogers, right? I mean, why wouldn't you? Because normally you wouldn't be able to pick him because he doesn't have a good string of fixtures. You don't trust him as much. But this particular week, his fixtures say, and if you agree with them, it's all about your beliefs. If you agree that Rogers is how many expected points does he have?
I was just checking that out.
So, and let's do Semenyo.
Yeah, Semenyo, I think, was just slightly ahead, 4.73. Yeah.
Again, I didn't do this again, so it was just a guess. So again, it's a good example where if you want to take on risk, then you pick Rogers. If you don't want to take risk because you're OR5 and this is game week, or you're OR1 and this is game week 38, then you absolutely pick Semenyo. I think that's how I look at it as well. Because I'm not off to the best start, I took the EO risk this week with Haaland. Didn't work out. Saka didn't score a lot. But I will continue to look for more risk. Last season, I was, I think, 3K by game week 21 or something. Then I was a little bit more conservative. I would not say too conservative, but I wasn't actively seeking out risk.
Yeah. So would you say at this point in the season, it is the right time to maybe actively seek out that risk if you're chasing a little bit? And I suppose an add-on question, if you don't mind, is at what rank would you be feeling fairly comfortable not to be actively searching out that risk at this point in the season?
See, I think rank is so volatile at the moment. Like I've moved up 500,000 places, even though I had like a decent week. Now it was like 51 points or something, but I went from like 2.2 million to 1.5 million. So you're moving so much that don't fixate on rank too much anyway, because we're all bunched up. I would think of it more like where you are relative to people who you think you're competing with. If you feel you're behind 50 plus points or 100 plus points, I think you can start to take risk. Otherwise, you won't catch them because they don't make stupid decisions either. So I think look at yourself relative to competition and then think about your risk appetite. I wouldn't look at it overall rank at all at this stage. That's the first thing. Second thing, I think, is it right now the right time to engage in risk? It's very difficult to say. People talk about differentials all the time. It's all on YouTube. Here are my top 3 differentials for this week, right? But I don't like the term differential because sometimes you're picking a player. So now let's take another example. Let's take a differential like who can I say? McGinn, right?
Okay.
He looks like a differential. He's playing Wolves at home, isn't he? Is that their fixture?
Yes. Yeah.
So McGinn instead of Semenyo now is not risk, it's stupidity. So I mean so it's not a differential. Yeah. He could do well, of course, and somebody will post on X, I had McGinn captain and look, I'm amazing, and they'll get 2,000 new followers. But that was just you said I will get 1 in a dice and it landed 1. But you could have got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you just got lucky. So I would say take risk in players that have similar expected points, not materially lower expected points. Otherwise, you're just gambling. And if you keep gambling, we know what happens. The house wins, and therefore you may have 1 good season out of 10. So if your aspirations are similar to Sam and mine, which is to have 9 or 9.5 good seasons out of 10, then you should not be gambling. You should be taking risk.
Love that. I always like bringing it back to the roulette table almost, where you're placing chips on certain numbers, and so it's not a fair roulette table. Some numbers are slightly more likely to come up than others. Others are very unlikely, but they are still options. They can still come up trumps if you get lucky. So even the very worst pick you can possibly own, you can get lucky with it. It's still technically a differential, but you're going so far against the grain that you would have, it's basically a moonshot. With that in mind, I think now is a very good time to be switching over to a focus on game week 13, because game week 13 has ended up being a very popular week for free hits. I think I've seen a few polls going around on X at around 30 to 35% of the crowd. And I know, again, X is a very isolated part of the community who play FPL, but it's still a significant amount. So I'm going to bring it over to the fixtures. We'll start off with the attack for game week 13. And I'm not going to ask us to build free hit drafts. I'm sure both of us will do that in separate videos at some point this week anyway. So that'll be a bit boring to repeat. But which teams, if you were on a free hit this week, would you be naturally targeting? And which teams would you most be concerned by going after? If looking at the data here, where would you may think there might be traps?
Look, Man City is the obvious one. So I think 3 from Man City, a defender, a midfielder, attacker, something like that works. Like if you wanted to go Cherki, Doku, Foden in midfield, if you wanted to go Guardiola, O'Reilly, Nunes, Diaz, even Donnarumma, like all of those I think are decent. So 3 Man City looks obvious. Liverpool are a lot harder to pick.
Yeah.
I think I would certainly have Van Dijk and Salah on my free hit, but I understand that they're expensive and there's concerns. But if you're not picking 2 Liverpool, then I'm struggling. Like, I could play devil's advocate and say, you're picking a Man City midfielder, but 80% of the goals are going to Haaland. So where is your upside with the Man City midfielder? They could do well in any game, of course. It's Leeds at home. But Liverpool is always your fixture where there is that upside, right?
Yeah.
Van Dijk could get a bullet header. Salah could get a brace. So I would definitely have at least Salah, but personally, I would have both. Brentford, Aston Villa, I think those are 2 teams where you want to have 2 or 3 of their players, but you also have a little bit of trust issues.
Yeah.
But I would go there. Because when we think about free hit, we think everybody on Twitter is free hitting. But actually, it's not, like you said, it is a small bubble. So when the game loads in Gameweek 13, we'll see Rodgers at like 15%, 18% because they're on free hit. So there's huge opportunity in all these picks. So I think taking a mindset of, I'm afraid to go against Sar because Sar could do well. We've just talked about it. Semenyo could do well. But I think it's worth taking them on because they are higher owned, but similar or lower expected points. This is where models come into it. Just take the leap of faith and pick those players and then hope for the best.
Yeah. And we're always at this point, if you've got your free hit, there's always going to be a week where you're going to have to take that leap of faith anyway. I think this week does work for that if you've got it, unless you've got triple captain, and then there's maybe a slightly different decision to be made there. But because there are some maybe unfashionable teams that we don't have a lot of coverage in across the FPL player base, that you can take on, like you said, you've got a free Mo Salah at what, like 10-15% EO, but he'll be a bit higher. Few people will captain him, I'm sure, but you're never going to get a Mo Salah away at West Ham ever again with that kind of low effective ownership. Similar with people like a Rodgers or a Watkins. Now Watkins, I think, will give a lot of people the shivers, me even mentioning him on this. But again, 1.92 expected goals at home to Burnley. At home, 1.88 at home to Wolves. Sorry, reading the wrong column there. Is a very good, a very decent amount of XG to be putting up against anyone. I would probably want to take on a little bit of Aston Villa coverage there. Rodgers has looked good recently. The data, not so much. But there are players there. You can look at Marlon as well. And I think it is probably worth taking on that. I suppose the next question would be how, and I think you've kind of answered it already, but looking at the players that you're going against, so Saka away at Chelsea, you've got probably the Crystal Palace boys. You'd most likely be getting rid of a Mateta, Sarr, probably not too much Arsenal coverage in defense. There might be a space for Timber. I'll move over to the defensive data here now, actually. Arsenal, you won't see them as far down as this week, probably throughout the rest of the season. I don't think, maybe once or twice if they're unlucky, but down in, well, I say that they're still joint fourth, but there are cheaper defenders there with home fixtures that you would expect clean sheets for. Would you be confident or comfortable taking on those kind of picks, the Sakas, the Timbers, the Crystal Palaces of the world?
I think so. I mean, Crystal Palace for sure, because 24% is really low. I think the 30s, I mean, I think Arsenal, I mean, I'm looking at Liverpool numbers, they're low because markets have adjusted to them not keeping a lot of clean sheets. But I would say yes, because 10% clean sheet odds, better clean sheet odds is essentially 0.4, right? In expected points. So that's decent. So if you're getting 3 defenders over somebody else who has Liverpool, Arsenal, and Newcastle, let's take an example, then that's already 1.2 expected EV that you've got out of your that. And let's add a keeper as well. So 1.6 expected EV from it. So why? Yeah, that's nice. It's not amazing. Liverpool can do well. Arsenal can do well. Newcastle can certainly do well. Those are not terrible fixtures. Liverpool away to West Ham, Newcastle away to Everton. Arsenal, like you said, are always good. I would not have any one of them on free hit, but it's like you and me who are not on free hit also saying, yeah, like even in our attack, we have 6th, 7th, 8th. Even in defense, we have the 6th, 7th, 8th. And so it feels like you'll give up maybe 5 to 10 points to the field who are free hitting. That's not the end of the world.
Yeah. Yeah. I think both camps can feel fairly comfortable this week. I think if free hitters come out of this generally across the board, because a template does tend to form, and let's face it, if Aston Villa and Brentford both flop, or Liverpool more importantly flop this weekend, which can happen, then the free hit will probably turn out to be a bit of a disaster. But it is more likely than not that they don't flop and that they'll probably do all right. So
at least one of them does all right?
Yeah,
so
you would think so. And with that in mind, I mean, I played my free hit earlier on in the season, and I didn't feel massively comfortable going against some of the popular picks at that time. I think I ended up 7 points up on sort of the average that week, and about 7 or 8 above where I would have landed anyway. I'll take that for the first half of the season. I'd expect a bigger boost in the second half where we've got doubles and blanks. But as long as it's a marginal green arrow versus what you would have had, I would probably take that and run at this point. An extra 5 to 10 free points, I would absolutely take that right now. Okay, cool. So with that in mind, let's maybe, rather than do a full free hit draft or anything like that, what sort of makeup of the team would you be looking at? So triple Man City, I would assume. Triple Liverpool, or would you just go with double for now, do you think?
I think double. I think because they're not the early kickoff. I mean, you could go Gakpo, Salah, Van Dijk, but their defense is not amazing. So you can go just Salah, you can go Salah and Gakpo. So I think two feels all right.
That
or
sounds
even
good.
Just one, if people want it. Villa, 3 Brentford, 3 Man City, Salah, and one more. I think that would be it.
I like it. I won't ask you exactly which Villa, which Brentford right now, because I know we'll want to keep our powder dry for different combinations. It will be difficult to do it live. But yeah, that sounds good to me. Obviously, there is risk applied, and do tread with caution, any of you listening who are playing free hit, but you have our blessing and good luck to you if you are using it this week. Let's move on to the final section, which is our teams going into Game Week 13. I've got on screen, I would say my current team. I'm actually going to make the transfer to show what it looks like on my page right now, because I have moved João Pedro on for Thiago early. I wanted to catch that extra 0.1 million. I don't often move early. I would often move very last minute on these kind of things. But given Brentford aren't playing midweek, given most of the players that I've got here, there are a few playing midweek, but not a whole lot of them. And I don't mind Anderson on my bench. And a future move might rely on that extra 0.1 million. I did feel confident enough going with that. I've got an extra free transfer that I am saving for now. And that would probably be to get rid of Enzo Fernandez in my midfield. I've discussed it on a transfer plans video yesterday, or might have come out. Yeah, it would have been yesterday by the time people watch this. I don't feel like Enzo is a must sell, and I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on this as well, Pras. But to me, it feels like a luxury transfer. There are other midfielders I do like the look of. I do actually have 1.5 million, 1.6 million actually in the bank to upgrade him. So I could get all the way up to a Foden, could go to Rodgers, could go to Cunha. There are plenty of options, or I could take it down to a Minter or even an Elliot Anderson as well, if I wanted to really free up funds for future moves. So that's where I'm at the moment. Like you said earlier, I am kind of shrugging my shoulders thinking, okay, I'm going against a few of the popular free hit teams. I've not got much Brentford coverage, although I think I've probably got the most important coverage. Not got much, any Aston Villa. Liverpool, I've got none. So I am a little bit worried. But equally, I'm looking at that team thinking, yeah, I mean, they all look fine. The expected points are decent. I think the minutes will be good. I might lose a few points to the crowd, but I'm hoping it won't be a car crash. And this is where I ask you to tell me that I'm right and everything's going to be okay.
Well, you can't play a free hit anyway because you've used it.
Exactly.
But I think with Enzo, the only thing is let's just see Palmer's minutes, because I think Enzo without Palmer is great because he's on set pieces, on penalties, or potentially on penalties, gets forward the longer the game goes because João Pedro is taken off or Delap is taken off or something like that. So he continues to move further forward. If Palmer comes into his place, he'll play number 10 90 minutes, right? So Enzo will play 80, 90 minutes in the 8. Of course, Palmer could move to the right, but I don't see it happening too much because they're the Netos and the Gittins and the Garnachos of the world hold width a lot. So I think he's a good pick until Palmer is back, but Palmer is not going to be back anytime soon. I think they're going to take it slowly. So after this week, Enzo has Leeds. But then do remember that Chelsea do have games, I think they have the Sunday, Wednesday, Saturday turnaround. So which game does Enzo miss? The concern is that Leeds game. That's why this was the thinking process. It looks stupid, but I sold it before Burnley. I got Minte, so I was actually equal on the trade. But I did it because I was getting increasingly concerned with that yellow flag over the international break as well. That if he misses the Leeds game, that's terrible, because then you get the 2 tough fixtures. It's fine to have him, but not the great or the good Leeds fixture. I think that one is also away. So in general, Chelsea can be a sell, but I think in a case like Enzo, where there are route to points, you can also keep him. I don't think it's urgent. The other consideration is that the players who you would want to get for him, like Minte, like Cunha, don't have the best fixture this week. So Minte is away to Forest, Cunha is away to Crystal Palace. Both are not great. So, I mean, if you looked at expected points, let's say for Cunha, how much more is he to 3.6? Is he even more? I don't think so. Okay, he is higher.
4.55.
In this case, if he's fit, I think Cunha can be doable because you get that expected bump already, and then Cunha minutes look good after as well, and the fixtures are great. So he's like the third here. So that would be something that you could obviously explore.
Maybe Foden's the answer. Expected 5 this week. Good fixtures coming.
Foden could be the answer, but over 13, 14, 15, he's not going to play all 3. Like, I know he's playing 90 minutes every game, but this is Pep and this is Christmas. So I'm a little bit more reluctant to say Foden. I would say Cunha is also a good pick. If you can get to Foden, get him this week. You have the luxury. You can move into Cunha next week. Sure, that's also viable.
Yeah. I did say that a little bit tongue-in-cheek. I'm not sure I'm brave enough to go Foden. Like I said, I'm quite a conservative.
I think Foden will be popular on free hit, right?
Free hit for sure. Yeah. You would think he'd do well this week, and his minutes in game week 13 at least should be fairly secure. Unless there is some pepping going on. I don't know, but
yeah,
it's always possible.
I mean, the Champions League lineups will be interesting. People will start to second guess. Oh, he started midweek. Is he going to start the weekend? But yeah,
very much so. I think the interesting thing with Enzo is I'm surprised he stayed on the pitch for as long as he did against Burnley, given that he's got Barcelona, followed by Arsenal, followed by Leeds away, which is probably the easiest one after the Burnley fixture. I'm surprised he stayed on for so long against Burnley. It does lead me to think that maybe they're targeting Leeds as a moment where he might come off early. They might reduce his minutes. So I feel relatively comfortable selling him, even if it's for a player without an ideal fixture this week. Although, again, I'm saving the transfer for now in the knowledge that something can go wrong in the midweek. So maybe Semenyo's not quite fit, and then I can just hold on to Enzo for another week and use that transfer elsewhere. Anyway, enough about my team for now. I think I've got your code with me, so I'm going to quickly put that in. Is it 35? I think it's
3570.
Got it. I didn't know whether I could say it out loud on the show or not. Whether that's
fine.
Does this look familiar? Is this your team, Pras?
Yes, this is very much my team. I will be playing Timber instead of Anderson. I know there's DEFCON potential with Anderson, but I just think Arsenal is just too good. So my beliefs are that Arsenal have better clean sheet odds. But I don't plan to do anything actually this week unless there's an injury. Like I can do Semenyo to Cunha, I can do Mateta to Thiago if any one of them is injured. I have 0.4 in the bank. I could even do Rodon to, let's say, Konza if I wanted an Aston Villa defender. But I'm not very super keen on any of that. I think next week there'll be more interesting things, or the week after, where I can sell Mateta and Sarr for, let's say, Voltemade and Gordon, something like that, when they're home to Burnley, as my last transfers before the Game Week 16 bonanza. So for the moment, I'm quite relaxed, because the thinking is that we'll just take it game by game. If I have a couple of injuries, I'll play the free hit. But otherwise, if I don't need to, I'll save my transfer. And if there's an emergency free hit needed to be deployed in 14 or 15, I'll be ready to do that. So a little bit of a whole week. I did use 3 transfers just before this, so it feels like the team doesn't need one now.
Yeah, you're in a strong spot. And I think having that free hit in your back pocket in case of emergencies means that you don't really need to panic all that much with an injury or two, because you can just sort it out as long as they're not long-term injuries. And obviously you're just met with those problems when you get back from a free hit, but you've only got a couple of game weeks to survive before the 5 free transfers anyway. So yeah, you seem to be in a good spot. I really am jealous of the Minter pick. I know it's against Nottingham Forest away, but I've still got a good gut feeling about that. I think he's a very solid pick moving forwards, even if he is jamming a couple of assists at the moment. A few of them a little bit.
I mean, he gets all the attacks are through him. So
yes,
there was a couple of other chances where I was like, oh, he could have got an assist there. But yeah, you can't get all of them.
Definitely. I mean, yeah, he's just a glorious player. On that note, actually, you did mention Mateta quickly. As an owner, and I'm asking all owners this at the moment because I'm petrified of him going into any game week. How are you feeling about his expected minutes through this period? We mentioned, obviously, we don't love any insecure picks with lower expected minutes going into this crunch. Do you still see him as someone who should normally be getting 80 to 90 minutes, or do we have some more doubts over him considering Nketiah's back? He's managing something with his knee. I know he had bandaging over him at the end of the last match. What do you reckon?
Yeah, so it's that, right? I mean, we don't know what is the situation with the injury. So I see 2 things over the midweek, or Thursday. If he starts and is taken off very early again, then that's a little bit concerning that this is going to happen regularly in the league as well. Or if he misses out completely and then Nketiah gets a game, then I'm like, okay, he's been rested. He's going to start in the league again. So it little bit depends on the minutes we see on Thursday. Knowing Glasner, he's going to start Mateta again, and then he'll just sort of keep playing him. Of course, minutes become a concern with Mateta. He gets 90s, and then suddenly starts to get these early subs. This happened back end of last season as well. We will see. I think Thiago is right there, right? If I need to move money, then Thiago is right there. And in my midfield, I don't have any transfers to make. So even if I did Mateta to Thiago, I'll probably next week end up doing Lacroix, Rodon for Lacroix or something like that, go 4 at the back. So that's a route I have thought about. But honestly, on a Monday, like, my style of play is just chill and then see the midweek games and then take it from there. And every Monday, my thing is, unless it's a planned move, I'm going to be saving. So we'll see if that happens or not.
Yeah. Is your mentality basically to roll whenever you can physically roll? Is that like roll is the optimal route wherever you can? And then
if there's no fixture swing, so I don't think there's a big fixture swing for a team that I desperately want. So if, Man City has a big fixture swing, but I don't see a pick here. So, that I can jump onto. I could do Senesi to O'Reilly, for example, if I wanted to. It's a good fixture swing. But before Christmas, again, why would I? Like, Senesi is just eating DEFCON every week. So I wouldn't do that. But apart from that, if it's a team I'm happy with, like, the thing you'll notice about this team is every single player plays a lot of minutes. Apart from Mateta, every single one of these guys plays 80 plus minutes, so if they're fit. So that's the theme of this, and that's what I'm trying to make it do more. And so maybe Timber needs to go, and I was going to do Timber to Van Dijk this week instead of Gabriel, but Gabriel got injured. So if this was Gabriel, then you could say completely that this is, even in 14, dare I say, it's actually looking quite healthy.
I would have done something very similar to you if Gabriel was still fit. I think Timber might be living a charmed life in my team otherwise, but given Gabriel's out, it just made sense to hold on to him as well. But yeah,
and he got the assist.
And he got the assist. Amazing. I couldn't believe that. Although it was a bit frustrating watching that game as a Saka and Timber owner and not getting away with anything else. But, you know, these things happen. I suppose the theme of this show is very much don't be punting on someone like a Doku around now. It's just not, it's not going to work out, surely.
I mean, on free hit, why not? But yeah,
on a free
normally
hit,
no.
sure. That's yeah, different thing, I think. Yeah. Anyway.
Excellent.
We'll move past the teams. We'll take away from Solio for a second and go back to the main screen because I've got a quick fire for the end of the show.
Okay.
This is meant to be no more than a couple of minutes. You've got maybe 10 seconds to answer each of these questions, just more out of interest than anything else. I'll bring them up one by one and then we'll see how you go. If you want to elaborate on it, that's absolutely fine. But let's try and keep it short and sharp. So first of all, game week 13, who are you most scared of not owning this week?
It's going to be Liverpool attacker. So Salah. I mean, he could score a hat-trick against West Ham.
Okay. Number 2, who in your team are you most excited to have this week?
This week, I'm going to go with Semenyo, which is an odd answer because, you know, a lot of people own him. But I think nobody on free hit will pick him just because he's not scored in a couple of games. He's playing a promoted team. I know Sunderland are doing better. But yeah, I think he's got potential this week.
Yeah. And you mentioned this week. What about long term? Have you got anyone in your team you're just genuinely excited about longer term?
Oh, Minte is that one. Like I got him this week. He got me an 11-pointer. He's got lots of lovely home games to come. And in one of the weeks where he's playing away to Liverpool, I'll be free hitting, likely to be free hitting. So I think I've got a fantastic run of great fixtures. And he's like one of those players you love to watch, right? He's like the Semenyos and the Sars and the Sakas. I'm basically collecting all right wingers. So yeah, lovely to watch and I'm excited to own him.
It's a shame to be collecting right wingers and Salah's just gone out of fashion, isn't it? That's just, it just seems cruel. Otherwise it could be perfect.
Correct.
Final question, and this is probably a fairly abstract one, but if we're giving ourselves rank goals at the halfway point, obviously all of us will have used chips, or all of our first half season chips by game week 19. Do you have a rank goal in mind by the time we get to that point, or are you still fairly, I guess, not really too bothered by rank even at that point in the season?
Normally 500k, 500,000 is my target to get by Christmas. This year it's 800k, and I do a team selection video on the Wire, and there I've got these targets set up. So
yeah,
my game week 19 target is 800k. Normally it has been 500, 400k, and I do remember the seasons. There was one season where I was 400k. I did end up in top 10k. So it is possible that you have a lucky second half of the year and you can make it. But anything under 1 million, you should be easily hoping for a top 100k rank. Like it's all doable.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think people sometimes panic a little bit too early. That would be my general advice, is if you're having a bad start, there are some brilliant managers far behind where you are now, like just in the multiple millions, that I'm sure come the end of the season we won't even remember that they were down there, that they will turn it around. And I think just play properly, play sensibly, and you should be able to make up the ground with the odds little bit of opportunity to take on some smart risk, as Pras mentioned earlier on in the show. Right. Well, thank you very much. It has been a genuine joy, and we've wrapped this up in just under an hour, which was my target all along. So, Pras, thank you so much for joining me for the first ever guest on my channel. If you did enjoy today's video, I'd really appreciate it if you could leave a like, hit subscribe. But Pras, since you're here, where can we find you? I'm sure most people will know anyway, but this is your moment to plug anything you want to plug. And obviously, if there's a Solio plug that you want to throw in there as well, I'd be all ears.
Well, what I'll plug is that do subscribe to Sam's channel at FPL Pricey. It's wonderful. He's got a lot of good stuff. He's a great FPL manager, a great guy. So if you want to subscribe to his channel, do that. If you want to find me, I'm on X on Pras, PRAS_FPL. And I'm on a bunch of stuff, which is I'm affiliated with Solio. We do a podcast on Tuesday nights, published on a Wednesday. I do a podcast on the FPL Wire. Occasionally, I do a podcast for Fantasy Football Scout and other things, but I will leave it there.
Yeah. Is there anything you don't do? Honestly, man, it's crazy. You must be the busiest guy in FPL. It is genuinely amazing, your work ethic in this community. So the fact you found time to even come on this is quite astounding. And I do feel sorry for your wife.
Well, she's fast asleep. We have no worries there. But no, look, I mean, I wanted to do it, and it's been a pleasure. It's been a while since we've had a chat, so I enjoyed it.
It has been. And thank you again, mate. I'm sure we'll talk again very soon. And hopefully see you at an FPL meetup at some point in the near future too. But for now, we'll take it offline. I'll get this all saved and up in the morning. It has once again been a pleasure. Thank you for joining me. And if you've enjoyed today's show, then obviously do make sure you subscribe to all of the places that Pras has mentioned. And if you could subscribe to me as well, that'd be greatly appreciated. For now, though, I will bid you farewell and good luck in Game Week 13.